Hi, Nisha.
Hello,
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine, my friend. What? Yes. So,
All
before we
right.
start, I like to welcome you. So, welcome to Nisha, our expert in supply chain maturity assessment. Nisha is one of the leading core team, who have been working for years on SCOR updates for digital standards, supply chain maturity index, helping people to understand about their supply chain maturity, talent, how to improve supply chain. So, Nisha, floor is yours, and it would be great just to give us intro about yourself quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Shireen. So, as Shireen mentioned, I have been working for ASCM for the past 3 years. I focus on supply chain transformation, focusing on our benchmarks and our assessments. So, namely SCORE. So, I help organizations implement SCORE, and I also help develop, architect the assessments associated with SCORE, and how we can use those assessments to improve your supply chains, create high performance supply chains, and really get a good picture of current state and where we may want to go in the future. So today what I want to do is just give you an introduction to some of our assessments, and provide you with an overview of what you can gain from those assessments, how they work, and also provide some QR codes for more information. And obviously you can always reach out to Shireen if you're interested in any of this material. We'll also provide a quick QR code so you can fill out some information, and we can easily get back to you as well. So with that, let me go ahead and get started.
Yes, please.
All right. So first off, I know I talked about SCORE, but I want to reemphasize that the SCORE framework is our supply chain framework at ASCM, and it is a true standard. So the SCORE framework has been around for several decades now. It is maintained by an industry university consortium. It is the de facto standard for supply chain. And so if anyone is not familiar with SCORE, I highly recommend that you spend some time with the framework. It is an open access framework, so you can go online, score.ascm.org. You can look at the framework yourself, spend some time familiarizing yourself with it. It contains four major areas, and those four areas are metrics, processes, practices, and skills. So those are the four areas that our assessments also focus on. In SCORE, you can get a comprehensive set of processes, practices, skills, etc., for supply chain. And so it's a really nice place to start when you're looking at improvements, because it gives you what is standard. And this is what is standard across industry. It's an industry agnostic view. So if you haven't done so, I highly recommend you spend some time with the SCORE framework to familiarize yourselves with it. Now, given that SCORE is the framework that we utilize, it is the framework for supply chain, our assessments are built off of the SCORE framework. So given those four pieces of the framework, we've developed assessments for each of those major areas. So on the metric side of the house, we have an assessment called ScoreMark. This is our quantitative benchmark. So today I'm not going to spend a lot of time on ScoreMark, but I do want you to know that that is available. And this is a true benchmark. And what it is a view across the level one metrics. So the key metrics for any supply chain. They have standard definitions, they have standard calculations. And what this assessment allows you to do is to look at your metrics and to compare yourself with similar organizations with similar revenues in similar industries, etc., so that you can benchmark and you can identify any gaps and methodologies to close those gaps. The other two assessments
Nisha,
are yeah.
Nisha, if you allow me, if you give just 2-3 minutes overview on
Yeah,
SCOR, because not everyone in here knows the SCOR. So just if you open the website, it will be highly appreciated. Thank you.
yeah, definitely. I can spend a minute doing that. Let me stop sharing my screen and we can go to the framework itself. I think it's important because if you're not familiar with SCOR, I think you'll find it to be a very, very helpful tool.
Exactly. And I work with the SCOR, I use it, and each time you make a demo in front of me, I learn something new. So I want everyone to learn from you, the source.
Yes, definitely. Let me bring the website up. All right. Can everyone see my screen now? Can you see
Yes,
this? Yes,
yes.
excellent. So this is the website score.ascm.org. So when you come to this website, you will see this double infinity loop diagram for the SCOR model. Double infinity loop because we are trying to emphasize the fact that this model is not linear. As you know, supply chain is not linear, right? It is a continuously evolving, continuously in motion entity. And that's what we are trying to depict with this double infinity loop model. Now, on each of the leaves here, you'll see a major process area. So there are 7 major process areas in SCOR. So you can see plan, you can see order, source, fulfill, transform, return, and in the middle is orchestrate. So orchestrate is very important. These are our processes that are that basically exist in order to make the supply chain run, to make all the other processes come together. So think of things like strategy, things like contracts, things like data information and technology. Those all fall within the orchestrate section of SCOR. Now, what is nice is you can delve into each of these processes and you can identify the specific sub-processes. You can identify the specific metrics associated with that process. You can identify the skills associated with that process. So just as an example, let's delve into source. So if I delve into source, if I scroll down, I can see within source, there are 4 major sub-process areas. Now remember, SCOR is industry agnostic, so this is not going to get into that level of detail which might get specific to an industry or to a company. But in an industry agnostic view, here are the major sub-processes within source. Similarly, within source, you can also see the metrics associated with source. So on the right, you see a view of metrics, you see a view of best practices for source, and you see a view of skills associated with source. So this is the people section of SCOR. So there is a lot in here. And I should mention that you can then click down a level. So the lowest level that SCOR goes down to is what we call level 3. So that is what you see here on the right. These are the level 3 processes for strategic source. So within SCOR, the main process area is source. The level 2 process is S1 strategic source. And underneath that level 2, there's a series of sub-processes that start with S1.1 all the way to S1.10. So it's very comprehensive, as you can see. And if I click here, then even within that process, it will tell you the definition of the process, the associated metrics, the associated practices, and the associated skills. So everything is cross-referenced. Similarly, I can start with metrics. If I want to look at what are the metrics that I need for my supply chain, I can go to the performance section of SCOR, and it lists out all of the metrics that are under resilience, economic, and sustainability. And then I can do the cross-reference between metrics and processes as well. A lot in here. The only other thing I will mention, because I think you really need to just spend some time playing with the model, there is a search function, which is really helpful. So if there's any topic that you are interested in and you want to see what is in the framework around this topic, the easiest thing to do is to look at the search function. So for example, I'm interested in circular supply chain. What does SCOR say about circular supply chain? I can just type in circular. I don't even have to finish it. I can see there are some processes around circular supply chain management. There's also some metrics around circularity. There's some best practices. So you can easily see what's in the model for any one topic as well. So that's the intro I'll give to SCOR, unless, Shireen, there's any other major area you would like to cover around the model itself.
No, thank you. I just want people to know that it has been developed since, I think, 93, more than 14 versions by all experts. And thanks to ASCM, it became for free. It was not free access, and only 2 years ago, it became free, accessible knowledge for everyone.
And I should mention, speaking of free, there's also a free SCOR class here. So if you can see where my cursor is, if you would like to get some more details around SCOR, this is a free self-paced class. So you can click there. I believe it's a 3-hour self-paced module that gives you a really good introduction to SCOR. So if you're interested, highly recommend doing the free class here as well.
Yes,
all right.
And yes. Thank you for the quick intro. Someone asked your question here.
Okay. Sorry, it's a little difficult for me to see the chat, so if you wouldn't mind repeating.
No issue. Okay, everyone is adding his own AI assistant, so no problem, no question.
Okay, no worries. So let me just switch back to my PowerPoint.
Please.
All right. So now that you've kind of seen the framework, this might give you a little more context. As you saw the 4 major areas of SCOR, we have assessments associated with each of those areas. Now, we do have the quantitative score mark, and we have the 2 qualitative assessments of maturity and talent. So today I'm going to focus on the qualitative assessments. Obviously, if you're interested in the quantitative assessments, the quantitative benchmarking, Shireen can definitely help with that. That is an ASCM standard assessment as well. So feel free to reach out if you're interested in the benchmarking too. For the qualitative assessments, the 2 that we have are maturity and talent. So you can see the 2 qualitative assessments, just kind of a snapshot of the output on the right-hand side. You know, what our qualitative supply chain maturity assessment provides is, and that's the one on the top right, it provides a view of process maturity across the 7 major process areas that are in SCOR. So it gives you a baseline view of where your organization stands from a plan, order, source, transform, etc. perspective. And it does that kind of at an aggregate level, and then we go a level deeper as well. We've identified the 27 focus areas in SCOR, and you're provided a view of maturity across those areas as well. And I'll go into more details about this assessment, but that is one of our qualitative assessments that is free. It is a business development tool. So we'll talk about that assessment. And then the other assessment that we're going to talk about today is what's on the bottom right. So this is our talent assessment. So the talent assessment really focuses on the skills and practices side of SCOR. And the intent of the talent assessment is for you to get a view of those skill areas which may be most deficient for your organization. So if I have a certain budget for upskilling, for talent development, etc., these are the skill areas that I might want to focus on, given kind of where my organization stands in terms of their knowledge of these skill areas. The nice thing about these two assessments is they can be used together. So you can use the maturity assessment and the talent assessment, and the bottom right view actually shows both assessments on one axis. So what that allows you to do is identify the skill areas not only that are most efficient for your organization, but also are the most important from a process maturity standpoint. So these analyses are really meant to provide that high-level view, that high-level starting point in terms of where you want to focus your efforts from a process maturity perspective, from a talent development perspective. And that's really the intent. I mean, these assessments are, as I mentioned, qualitative. So certainly there are more rigorous assessments that you would want to use as you move through your supply chain improvement and transformation efforts. But these are a good starting point. These are a good place to identify those major areas of concern, where to focus your efforts, etc. So with that, I'll go through the two assessments in a little bit more detail so you can get a sense of what's there, see if this might be a good fit for your organization and where you might want to go from here. So we'll start with the maturity assessment. So a little bit of background here on the maturity assessment. As I mentioned, it is a qualitative assessment. This is a free assessment. It's also a self-assessment. So important, I mean, this is where you will be rating your organization based on some set criteria that ASCM provides as the standard from SCOR. It is an assessment that is an end-to-end assessment. So the scope will cover all of the major process areas in SCOR. It's also done at a supply chain segment level. So it's very possible that within an organization, you have multiple supply chains. I used to work for Boeing, classic example of this. Within Boeing, certainly there's a supply chain for production aircraft. There's a supply chain for military aircraft. There's a separate supply chain for spares and repairs. All of these have very different structural elements and need to be treated differently. So important to remember that as you do one of our assessments, you really want to focus on a specific supply chain segment so that what you're finding in terms of how a process is completed is accurate for that segment, right? It becomes difficult when you look at two very different segments and try to lump together scores. So done at a segment level. Go ahead.
Would you elaborate here about types of supply chain such as make to stock, make to order, engineer to order, export ones, local ones, B2B, just to help people to understand more?
Sure. So when we talk about the supply chain, we talk about doing these assessments. I mean, these are all elements of the things that Shireen mentioned. These are all some of the structural elements of the supply chain, right? So as you think about your supply chain, you would want to look at what is the manufacturing strategy, right? So if you have one supply chain that's make to stock versus one that's engineered to order, that tells you upfront that these are going to be two very different supply chains, right? The way that you do procurement for engineer to order versus make to stock is going to be really different. The way that you do product fulfillment may be very different. The way that returns are handled, etc. So as you think about the structural elements of your supply chain, the way that ordering happens, the way that sourcing happens, I mean, is this a very, very much a situation where you're reliant on one supplier? Is this a commodity situation? These are all of the elements that you would want to think about as you think about the architecture of your supply chain. From an assessment perspective, you want to think about these because if these are significantly different across your organization, you may have multiple supply chains, and you would want to think of those multiple supply chains differently from an assessment perspective. So that's really getting to the root of what we call supply chain segmentation, right? So making sure you understand what are my supply chain segments and that you appropriately apply any tools based on those segments. So coming back to the assessment itself, the way that this is handled is that it is a self-assessment. You would be given a Qualtrics survey link. So it's an online self-assessment. You would complete the assessment, and then within 2 weeks, you would receive a formal output briefing that would summarize your assessment results, how the organization did, and then what are some next steps that the organization can take to improve their level of maturity. And so what you're seeing on the bottom are a couple of views that are provided out of the assessment itself. In the middle section, you see that view of how you score across the 7 process areas. Important to mention, right now, you will only see one set of results. So you'll only see the triangle view. The square view represents a future state where we'd be able to provide benchmarks. Now, right now, we don't have enough organizations in our database to provide a reliable benchmark. That is something that we are working on. So in the future, as we get more organizations to take the assessment, in the future, we will provide you a benchmark of where you stand compared to potentially industry peers or revenue peers, et cetera. That's a future state. And then the right-hand side view is just a view of the focus areas, the individual focus areas within the assessment, and where they sit from a level 1 to 5, so that you can easily see where you might want to focus your transformation, your supply chain improvement efforts. So from our perspective, why are we doing this assessment? For ASCM, ASCM is a nonprofit. It is the world's largest supply chain nonprofit. And our overall mission statement is to make the world a better place through supply chain. Now, everything we do should be rooted in that mission statement, right? And from an assessment perspective, one of the things that we really want to make sure we're doing is we're providing a community impact. We're providing a vehicle that allows for dialogue around supply chain maturity across industries, across countries, across multiple types of barriers. We also want to be a voice of record, right? I mean, we want to be able to do additional research and reporting around supply chain maturity. And we want to provide that out to our community. And then it is a business development tool. I mean, certainly part of what this is us understanding where an organization's needs are so that we can better focus our efforts on those specific needs. So that's kind of the why are we doing this question. So as an overview of the assessment itself, I know I've mentioned that it's rooted in SCOR, that we cover the major process areas. It is an online assessment. So the way that this works is you have a couple of options here. You can either have one person take the assessment for the organization, and in some smaller organizations, we've seen that. We have one supply chain leader take it for the whole organization, for the whole supply chain segment, or you might have a small group of people. You might have a few key leaders take the assessment. We have the ability to aggregate results. I mean, we can do that. And sometimes what's really helpful is to have a facilitated view of the assessment where you bring together some key leaders, you have a facilitator come in and help you through the assessment. So they would be pointing out the key aspects to be considering. They would help rationalize the various opinions in the room, and you would provide one consensus view of supply chain maturity based on that facilitated assessment. And I think, Shireen, you've done a few of these facilitated assessments, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we did some, and we related it to business losses. We showed them the business losses related to supply chain, and we quantified it, and it was very fruitful for the organization. Because honestly, all the times we did those assessments, it answered the question where I am in planning, where I am in sourcing, how good is my over supply chain, what are my weak points of supply chain. And the trick, as you mentioned, is not to do it for all the company, is to do it for one of the main segments or core supply chains. And it translates the problems people are suffering from every day. And what I love about the assessment as well is that with the team of the assessment on from ASCM, we get a comprehensive report with details, and it shows the people next step. So it's easy. So you know where you are, what should be done. So that's I always get this positive feedback from everyone. And everyone in the meeting should know and understand it's complimentary assessment. It's no fees for it. We usually do a client visit and we do it over 2 days and we give feedback reports. And ASM is doing it to create database for benchmarking for all industries. So which is really very important. So
Yep.
that's
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think so to Shireen's point, I mean, if you are interested, then certainly, having that facilitated view is super helpful. I mean, you get the expertise of a very knowledgeable supply chain professional, and you're able to kind of better rationalize the views of the organization and really gain more understanding of a specific process area and where things stand in that area. So definitely something to consider. As Shireen also mentioned, at the end of this, what you get, so once you've completed the assessment, you would submit the assessment online, and then within a couple of weeks, you would get a full report out. And that includes a view of where you are as well as next steps. And those next steps are really next steps, again, that follow those major areas of SCOR. Next steps from a process standpoint, next steps from a metrics collection standpoint, next steps from a skill development standpoint, next steps from a best practices standpoint. So that's the basic process. The rating scale is shown here. It is a 1 to 5 scale. This is pretty consistent with our ASCM offerings, right? So if you take CTSC or CSCP, you'll see a similar level 1 to 5 scale. Each of these levels are defined in detail. So there are set criteria for what level 1 means, what level 2 means, et cetera. And I'll show you some examples of that as well. I stated earlier that we have 27 major areas that are covered in this assessment across the 7 processes. So these are those areas. This is what's in the assessment. So there's no, it's not secret, there's no black box. This is what you will be assessed against. And these are all, you can see in parentheses, the linkage back to SCOR, right? So for example, if I look at B2C ordering, I know that that is the O1 process in SCOR. Or if I look at transportation management, aspects of this are found in F1, F2, F3. So you can kind of see where it comes from in the framework itself. But these are all the areas that are covered in the maturity assessment. I won't belabor this, but this is what I mentioned earlier, the criteria for level 1 to 5. What does it mean to be an orchestrated supply chain? And you can kind of see in the sub-bullets, it talks about governance, it talks about the use of standard metrics, technologies supporting those, organizational orchestration, et cetera. So these are all very well defined so that there's clear criteria for where you stand. And here's an example. So all of the items in the assessment follow this basic standard, right? So this is the SNOP question in the assessment, and all of them are worded in this manner, which is, which of the following best describes X process in your supply chain? So in this case, it's SNOP. So which of the following best describes the SNOP process in your supply chain? And you'll see a level 1 through 5 is defined. and it's defined specific to SNOP, right? So the intent here is for you to relatively easily find yourself in one of these levels so that you can look at the question and say, oh, my company is mainly here. So I can quickly assess myself at a level 2, for example. One thing that I should mention is that the idea of this assessment is for you to be conservative, right? So we don't want you to rate yourself too high. So if, for example, you have some elements of level 3, but you haven't met all the criteria for level 3, you should not be rating yourself a level 3, right? You should be rating yourself a level 2 because all the criteria have not been met. So that is an important distinction when you're assessing yourself. And that's also something that if you have a facilitator that they can help with. I think I saw a hand go up. Was there a question? Maybe not.
No.
Okay. All right, we'll keep going. All right, so some of the output views here. I think you've seen the one on the upper left, so I won't belabor that. The bar chart view just shows you for each of the 27 areas what the score was for that particular area, similar to the left to right level 1 to 5 view. And then the bottom right, this is the other view that Shireen was mentioning. This is the next steps view. So this provides you a view for each of the 27 items, where you currently stand in terms of maturity. It describes that maturity level. And then what are some things that you can start to think about to get to the next level of maturity? So if for forecasting methodologies, I'm at a level 3, what are some things that I should be considering so that I can get to level 4? So it's a nice little synopsis that can help guide some of your decision making. So the impact, and I think we've talked to much of this, but this is a qualitative assessment, and it can be a starting point for some more detailed analysis, like the quantitative assessment that I mentioned earlier, SCOR mark. It can also be a starting point for some more detailed process mapping. So often, especially when we're thinking about technology implementations, ERP upgrades, things like that, it's very, very important to have a consistent view of process. And often SCOR is utilized to provide that consistent view. So this can also be a starting point for your SCOR-based process mapping activities as well. And this can also be used as we think about talent development, technology investment, et cetera. So when you're scoping one of these assessments, some of the things to consider, and Shireen mentioned this one earlier as well, around the segments in your supply chain. Which segment of your supply chain do you want to focus on? How are you going to use the results? Who should be involved? I mean, that's another big one. This is a self-assessment, it's a qualitative assessment. So really important to get the right people to do the assessment. And then what's the best form to complete? Is this something you want to have facilitated? Is this something that one person in the organization is going to take, et cetera? And then, of course, time frame. When do you want to do it? If you're interested in the maturity assessment, this is a QR code. Feel free to go to the form here. It's a really quick form. Fill it out, and you can submit that information, and Shireen and team will be getting back to you on the assessment itself. Also, there is a YouTube video. It's an online 5-minute video. It gives you an overview of the assessment. So feel free to go there and take a look at that as well. So now I want to talk a little bit about the talent assessment. So the talent assessment is another free assessment that is focused on the skills side of SCOR. So this is one that provides you that top-level organizational view of where the skill deficiencies may be for the organization. So you can make some of those decisions around talent investments. Similar to the maturity assessment, this looks end-to-end. It is industry agnostic, and you'll also get a formal output briefing at the end of this. This is also done using the Qualtrics platform. These are a couple of views from the talent assessment. So the first view here shows you your bottom 20 skill areas. So across all the skill areas that are assessed, what are the most deficient? And then this one on the right, it will show you a view of what skills are most deficient. And then from an ASCM perspective, what types of courses can help address some of those deficiencies. So sometimes it might be a certification, it might be a foundations course, a certificate, etc. But what are those trainings that can help address those deficiencies? So process-wise, somewhat similar to the maturity assessment, again, an online assessment that is score-based. Something that's different here in the talent assessment, you have a couple of options in terms of how to take it. So one thing that we've seen organizations do is they want to get the view of their particular contributors, their individual contributors. So they'll distribute the talent assessment amongst the team, and the team will fill out the self-assessment for their skills. So each individual will fill out the assessment. We will get the results and aggregate them up to an organizational level. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it, if there's difficulty in getting the team to take the assessment, or if there may be other situations where you want to have a management team rate the skills of the organization. That's also a possibility. So you can take this as a team of managers, provide a consensus view. Similar process on the back end, we would provide you an output briefing to show which skill areas across the organization are most efficient. But I do want to emphasize this is an organizational level assessment, not an individual assessment. So we don't provide any individual disclosing information here. And we do have a minimum number of responses if you'd go the individual route, because we don't want to specifically call out any one person and their skill scores.
I think the minimum per department is 8, right?
So 8 is a guideline. I mean, we are a little flexible depending on the size of the organization, right? If it's a really small organization, it might be difficult to get to 8. But yes, that is kind of the recommended number, just so we can keep things somewhat anonymous. So from there, whether you fill it out as a management team with a consensus view or you have individuals fill it out, once it's complete, similar time frame, 2 weeks, you get an output briefing. And this output briefing is really going to be a set of dashboards. And what those dashboards provide is a view of what are your bottom 20 skills of everything that was assessed, what's most efficient, and then what's most efficient across each of the process areas. So within plan, there's a set of skills. Which of those skills is most deficient? What is my overall skill rating for plan? Specific to forecasting, what's my overall skill rating, etc. So you get kind of that detailed view of skills across a process area. Similarly, 1 to 5 scale here. I won't belabor the definitions, but those are provided similar to the maturity assessment. So the focus areas of the talent assessment, these should look familiar. They are the same focus areas as are in the maturity assessment. And this is by design, because we want to be able to use both of these together. So the idea is to look from a process perspective and then also look from a skill perspective across these areas. And for the talent assessment, what we've done is we've taken each of these 27 areas and we've identified the key skills in each of these areas. So these areas map back to SCOR, and then you have a skill mapping between what are the skill areas here that map to these 27. And here's what that looks like. So this is the example that I'm providing, which is plan. So in plan, there are three major focus areas. You have SNOP, you have forecasting, and you have collaborative forecasting. So you can see in the talent assessment, what we've done is we've defined the skills under each of those. So here are the skills for SNOP, here are the skills for forecasting, here are the skills for collaborative forecasting. So these are defined. You've got a clear view of what each of these are, and these are what get rated, right? So the way this works is if you have an organization, you've got planners, you've got buyers, you've got people in manufacturing, the planners would take the plan section, right? And they would only take the plan section because that is what they are knowledgeable in. And in the plan section, this is what they would see. They would see these particular skills, and they would have to rate themselves a level 1 to 5 in terms of their ability to perform these skills. The other thing I should mention is some of the orchestrate related skills that are applicable to plan are found in the plan section. So this is true across the board. So in Orchestrate, if you're familiar with SCOR, there's processes around data, information, and technology. Well, the pieces of data, information, technology specific to plan are found in the plan section. So you'll see things like item master data management, right? You'll see things like SNOP software, because those are the data, information, technology processes that are very specific to plan. So you'll see that across the board. So if you're interested in taking the assessment, there's essentially a few different groups that would take the assessment. So we've talked about the individual contributors, so your planners, your buyers, your manufacturing people, your warehouse people, etc. We also have the ability for managers to take it. So a manager could take it for their team, or a supply chain orchestrator could take it. So when I say supply chain orchestrators, sometimes in organizations, we might have a supply chain strategy cell. We might have a specific supply chain IT cell. So those perspectives are also important. They would only take a certain portion of the assessment that's applicable to them, but it is available for them to take. So that's also an option. And as I mentioned earlier, you could also have a consensus group take the assessment. So no matter who takes the assessment, the rating scale is the same. What differs is the wording of the questions and which questions they would answer, right? So if you're a manager, if you're taking it as a consensus group, you're really looking at your organization. If you're taking it as an individual, you're looking at your individual ability. So all options with the talent assessment here. So I showed these views earlier, but really kind of one of the big results that you get out of this is that view of what are your most efficient skills and what are the courses that you can utilize to help address those skill deficiencies. Along with that, what you would get is a view specific to the process area. So in plan, I have three focus areas: SNOP, forecasting, collaborative forecasting. Here's my result in terms of the skill scores in plan. Here's what it looks like if I take each one of those skills and look at them individually. So I can see in SNOP, my biggest issue is derivative planning. In collaborative forecasting, supplier operations is my most efficient skill area, etc. So it gives you that level of granularity as well within a process area. And then similarly, we have a set of scoping questions for the talent assessment. I mean, some things to consider if you want to take the assessment. Certainly, a big one is what is the right forum? based on your company's culture, based on time considerations, et cetera. Is this something you want to distribute to your employees? Do you want a management team to take it? What's the best way to do this assessment? What job functions are you looking at? How many people do you anticipate taking it? Again, time frame, and as always, most importantly, who is involved. So similar to the maturity assessment, we've got a QR code here. If you're interested in the talent assessment, go ahead, fill out the form attached to the QR code, and Shireen and her organization can get back to you on that as well. And then this is just an overview of the QR codes for both maturity and talent. We also offer a sustainability assessment. I know I didn't have a chance to talk about that one here, but if you're interested in sustainability, there's also an assessment associated with that. So lots of options here. I know I've been talking for a while now. I haven't been monitoring the chats. Are there any questions? And we've got a few minutes left. Anything that we can address here?
I don't see any feedback from any question, but someone is asking you. So someone is asking you, so the purpose is to know the maturity level for each process as a standalone, for example, or overall supply chain? That was the question.
Yeah, so you would get a maturity view of each process area, and then that would get aggregated up to a view for the whole supply chain. So if you look at the maturity assessment, you would get the view. So this bar chart view shows maturity for each of the focus areas, each of the 27 items in the assessment. And then on the top left, you would get a view of, for the 7 process areas, what is your maturity?
And overall, based on the majority, you'll know where the supply chain is.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see this supply chain is primarily a level 2 to 3.
Level 2.
You can just, yeah.
So it's level 2 because only one process at 1 and 2 at 3. Yeah. So you can see based on the majority. So you get the aggregate view. You get it by 7 area or the domains, the 7. Okay, because it's very important even in supply chains that we assess orchestrated well. How we have our risk plan, HR, resources, IT, ESG, circularity, everything. Okay. So, and it's quite impressive that with 27 questions, without wasting people in very long assessments and so much details, you can get an accurate picture about your supply chain. Okay. So that was the question I think we had. So I have a question for you. Okay. How do you find people reaction to those assessments? How do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the feedback has been very positive. I think people kind of like having the diagnostic view of, okay, and I think people especially like the ability to have an outside facilitator help with that, to provide that organizational level view of where things stand, right? Because I think you have to have a baseline, right? Everybody wants to do supply chain improvement, but I have to have a clear view where I currently stand, and I need a way to do that somewhat objectively. And that's really what this provides. So I think the feedback that we've gotten has been very positive.
And I think it's very important for them because it's complementary, no fees at that, and this ASCM is agnostic. You don't force them to do anything. You just give them the body of knowledge, right? And the reference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And for talent assessment, what is usually the weakest areas when you do it?
Oh, by far, usually it's plan. So usually plan, the skills associated with plan, and then some of the ones associated with orchestrate. So certainly in many companies, things like ESG, circular economy, tend to be weaker in some
For maturity?
companies.
Yes, for
Yes,
maturity. I
yes.
fully agree with you. And it's so
For
bad it comes
talent.
in plan. And people
Yeah.
hate us when we show them that because they think they are
Yes.
king and queen of planning and they are not happy about it. So for people, for the talent assessment itself, because I have done 2 or 3, and I was shocked that most of the problems I saw or it came in technology. So how about you? You have done it for talent, for people.
Yeah, for talent, it's kind of a mixed bag, depending on the I would say size and maturity of the organization. Certainly, there are pieces around technology that tend to show up. I would say some of the skills around things like change management, and even S&OP, are not as widely held as one would hope, right? So those are areas that also tend to show up as weak points in talent.
Okay. Okay. So I think the time has, we had lots of information from you. And I would like to, for people who are attending the event, do you like us to have more scope, another session on talent assessment, if you like it? How we get the questionnaire, how we respond the results. So I think talent is very important and you link it to the supply chain ladder, supply chain career.
All
Because
right.
people as well are super excited about knowing the supply chain career because unfortunately till now, supply chain career is not clear to everyone. How to grow on top, which courses should I learn, what should I know. And by the way, for SCOR, what Nisha showed us, there is training for many areas. Okay, so training is it tells you what skills needed and what training needed, what certification needed for each job, and that's really important. So I would like to thank you, Nisha. You have been supporting us, supporting the community of supply chain all over the world, supporting us in our region, and sharing all the best information all the time. We had an event 2 weeks ago. We had Grant flying to Riyadh, and we had Gustavo. We had as well in Cairo. So people are always keen on learning and learning from the best. And ASCM is the best, as we all know. It used to be Apex, the reference for all supply chain all over the world since 1957. So lots of experience, lots of knowledge, lots of challenges. So I can't thank you enough. Your commitment, your support, your time. Thanks, Nisha.
Thank you. Thank you, Shireen. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, and everyone is sending you applause and heart and
Thank you,
love.
everyone. Thank you.
You are loved everywhere.
Thank you all.
Okay, we're so lucky, super lucky to have you with us. Thank you for your support. Thanks to everyone who joined us today. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye-bye. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Yes, thank you very much. It's always great to have you with us, and we have been learning a lot from you as usual. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.